morning. How's everybody doing today? All right, happy Wednesday. Hope everybody's having an awesome morning so far. Just give you a quick synopsis of what I want to discuss today, what we're going to cover. I've had a lot more questions about vacant land recently, so we're going to talk about vacant land. We're going to talk about FHA and VA buyers, different things that you can do to try and help them stand out. We are going to talk about an opportunity where 10 contacts could make you $1,500 even if you don't get a sale or a listing or anything. So we're going to talk about that. And the first thing that I did want to show you today and have you listen to is I think we all need some reminders. So we're all very stressed. We all are going through a lot of high stress situations. I've had multiple people in my office talking about buyers are frustrated, sellers are frustrated, agents are frustrated, you're frustrated, family's frustrated. So there's a lot of frustration. And from those frustrations, we typically don't get the best opportunities to thrive. We typically don't start having the best self-talk either, so we're not saying the best things to ourselves. So I want to show you something this morning, and I hope it's just a reminder to monitor the things that you say to yourself. So I'm going to let the video speak for itself. It's a very short video, but it's really relevant in a time where the self-talk and the frustrations can really get to us and bring you down. So let me go right here. So please take a minute and listen and just pay attention, and we'll talk briefly about this afterwards.
You are too dark.
You are not good enough.
You are worthless.
You are not that pretty.
And you are the ugly twin.
Would you feel comfortable reading out what you just read to me to your sister, but as if it was about her? Hey, how's it going?
Hi.
We're so quick to judge or be unkind to ourselves. I think we sometimes forget how harmful that can be. So I want to dive straight into it. Define in your own words what self-esteem is to you.
The way I feel about how the world views me. If you look yourself in the mirror and you're happy with what you see,
you just have to know that you're important and that you matter.
How much confidence you have.
The way that you personally carry yourself around in life.
Tell me about some moments in your own life where you've struggled with self-esteem.
I have an identical twin. She's smaller than me. She doesn't have a gap in her teeth. So I kind of grew up comparing myself to her. I lose a lot of my self-esteem there. And I shouldn't, because she's my best friend. Like, she would never put anything wrong on me. There's nothing on her there. But that's where I lose my self-esteem.
Yeah. What I'd love for you to do now is I'd love for you to think about some of the thoughts you've had that have negatively affected your self-esteem. And actually what I want you to do is write it down here.
Okay.
And just write down the voice that you've heard in your head of a thought or something you've said out loud to yourself when you've had that experience of negative self-esteem.
Okay.
And take your time, no rush at all.
I think I'm done.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
You all right?
Mm-hmm.
If you feel comfortable, do you mind reading them out to me?
Okay, you are too dark. You are too tall. You are too touchy. And you are not like the rest of us.
You are not good enough. You are not as good as your friends or your sisters.
You are scared. You are worthless. You are unimportant.
You are not that pretty. You are not ready. You are unloved.
You are not skinny enough for that shirt. You're not smart enough to go to that college. And you are the ugly twin.
And how does it make you feel when you read that?
Sad.
You okay? Yeah? Yeah, we can be so harsh on ourselves sometimes. We judge ourselves so badly. I'm sure when you're reading that, it's so harsh to hear it as well.
It's hard, actually. Yeah. You know, we're so busy saying it in our heads and it's so normal there. But when you like physically verbalize it, it gets a lot scarier.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really painful when we say that to ourselves. You all right? I wanna do something. Just wait there. Okay, now you're gonna come with me. Okay, yeah. You okay? Yeah. Ready? Awesome. Gonna make her feel better.
Yeah.
I've got someone I want you to meet.
Oh gosh. Oh my god. Hi, sweetie. Hi.
I love that. How long have you been doing that for?
For a while. It's been a while.
I love that. That's awesome. So we just had a really important but tough conversation, and you were sharing some things with me. Would you feel comfortable reading out what you just read to me to your sister, but as if it was about her?
No, I can't do that.
No, I'm not going to do that.
No. Definitely not.
Why would you not?
Because it's just not very nice to say to someone.
Not at all.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like, we would never say those things to the person we love, but we say them to ourselves all of the time.
Yeah.
And so you actually wrote some things about your sister, right? And I'd love for you to read them out to her. Does that sound all right?
I wrote, "You are beautiful, you are smart,
You are creative, you are talented, and you are brave.
You are determined. You are inspirational, and to me especially.
You are inspiring to me. That's why I copy what you do or want the same things you may have sometimes.
You are my best friend in the world, and you are the best person that I know." So.
Well, I mean, ever since we were little, I wanted to be you. I copied everything you did, and you're kind of like my best friend all the time.
God, Lauren.
And you're just my teacher about everything. You show me what to do when I get older and what to do now.
The saying goes, treat others like you want to be treated. But perhaps we got it all backwards. Maybe the expression should say, treat yourself with the same love and respect you want to show others.
I love you. I love you too, sis.
So who's crying? Because I've got a tear. I'm not emotionally stable enough to handle this right now. So our words are so powerful. And as you heard, you would never think to say half of the things you say to yourself to somebody else. Just let that sink in a minute. If you would never say that to somebody else because it'd be so hurtful, it'd be so wrong, it would ruin their day, it would demoralize them, it could crush them, why would you say these things to yourself? Why would you allow these things to come into your life? Why would you allow these thoughts to persist? Why do these thoughts persist? Why do they happen? So a couple things. Number one, I want you to take some time today and write out everything that you are absolutely, unbelievably, outstandingly amazing at. I want you to write down every one of your amazing qualities. Put it on a sheet of paper and don't stop until you get to at least 30. and just write down everything that you like or love about yourself. Remind yourself of who you really are, not the person that you've become through habits, because of fear, because of not feeling good enough, because of stress, because of things that have been going on. Remind yourself of who you really are. Write down these qualities. Take some time today and do that. And then, secondly, I want you to take some time and I want you to pick up the phone and I want you to call at least 2 or 3 people, at least 2 people. And I want you to tell them how awesome they are and how grateful you are to have them in your life. Because you can see the power that it has when someone reminds you of how awesome you are. So give that gift to someone today. Take today and write down everything that's amazing about you, at least 30 things. Do not stop till you get to 30. 30 things that you love about yourself, that you like about yourself, that are your strengths, your best qualities, the things that you would, if you had to put on a resume and say, look at everything that I am and can be, write it down. And then call 2 or 3 people today and tell them how awesome and amazing they are, and thank them for being who they are and being in your life, and tell them how grateful you are to have them. We all need a reminder. There's so much stress. There's so much there's so much frustration. There's so much pain. There's so much anger. There's so much duality between, everything is so separate. Take some time today and be that light in somebody's life, including your own. And then you have to start being aware of the things that you think about. If you sat down and you wrote down every single thought that you had, I would beg to say that less than 10% of them would be anything that's positive about yourself. And that's no discount. It's just what happens. It's the way we try to keep ourselves safe. So be cognizant of your thoughts. Be cognizant of the things that you say to yourself. And every time you find yourself saying anything, I hear it all throughout the office all the time, even in jest, saying that, I was like, oh, I can't believe I did that. I'm so stupid. You made a simple mistake. You overlooked something. You were distracted. It doesn't make you stupid. Stop saying these things to ourselves, even something so simple like that. So let's be cognizant of the things that we say to ourselves. Be cognizant of the words. Be cognizant of how it affects us. Because every single thing you say to yourself has an effect on your outcome for this minute, this moment, this month, this year, every single thing. But you have to be careful because they become habits. And if you don't catch them, they continually become habits. And that habit that you form turns from a mood of just being a little down, upset, not happy with yourselves, or miserable or cranky. That mood turns into a temperament. That temperament turns into a personality trait, and that personality trait turns into, this is just how I am. So you have to be aware of the way that you think about yourself and talk to yourself. So be cognizant and catch those things. If everyone could do that for me today, that's 43 people online right now, plus the small groups that are there. If every single one of us did that, if every single one of us called at least 2 people, right? That's going to be 100 people that were affected. And then if we write all these great things about ourselves, that's another 43 people that we've lifted up today. So just take some time. It'll take you less than 3 to 5 minutes, and give somebody that gift. So that's the message I wanted to start with. There's so much frustration. I know buyers are frustrated, sellers are frustrated, agents are frustrated, you're frustrated, we're frustrated. There's a lot of stress going on. So we just need to change our focus and make sure that we are showing up as the best person we can be to get through these trials, tribulations, struggles, stresses, whatever they are. And let's just change the perception there. So moving on, we will go to, so like I said, I've had a lot of questions about vacant land. So I want to touch on that a little bit. So vacant land, I'm going to pull up a vacant land contract and walk through one and talk with you about that here in just a second. So that's going to be one of the things we talk about. But before we get into the technical sides and contractual sides, I want to talk about this down here. 10 contacts can get you $1,500. Who knows what I'm talking about? If you're online, if you can, raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. How can 10 contacts get you $1,500 without ever getting a listing, without ever putting a property on the market? How can you make $1,500 by just making 10 contacts? Who knows? Kalani, you know, absolutely. Very good. Who knows? Who knows what what I'm talking about here? I know you know. You do. You do. Right. So yes, OfferPad. Perfect. So what this means, what am I saying to you? So here's what I want everyone to do. I shared this with their team. It's not this earth-shattering idea, but it's just something to get you working towards something. So let's just say I want to see how many people. I'd love to count how many people can get $1,500 from OfferPad in the next 30 days. But it's going to take 10 contacts. So I want you to commit to making at least 10 contacts in this next week that are 10 contacts of setting an appointment for a pricing analysis with a homeowner. So I could put up here, call 10 past clients who own a home, call 10 people in your sphere, call 10 neighbors, 10 people you know that own a home, anybody. And all you have to do is talk with them and say, hey, I'm just trying to brush up on my skills. The market's absolutely crazy right now. I'm testing different markets to see what the pricing is in those areas so I can be ahead of the game a little. Would you mind if I practice on you? No cost to you, no obligations. I'm just going to tell you what your home is worth. And by the way, I'll bring you a few other tidbits along the way to show you, what's going on in this market. Plus, we need to catch up. I haven't talked with you in a little while. Does that sound fair? Is that something I can do? So all you're going to do is a pricing analysis, and you're going to submit it to OfferPad. A pricing analysis and submit it to OfferPad. Now, let me tell you what I did 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I made a few phone calls to just friends of mine that I know that own the home. There was no business behind it. It was, hey, what's going on? Time to catch up. How you been? What's happening? And they're like, no, everything's good. What does everybody know is going on in and around us right now? And what do all of my friends know about me? Everyone around us knows the real estate market is crazy. Everybody's talking about it. They've heard something somewhere along the lines. A friend, a family member, somebody they work with is bitching, complaining, or talking about how much money they just made. And then all of my friends know that I'm in real estate. So what are they inevitably going to be asking me whenever I talk with them? They're going to be asking me at some point in our conversation when I say, hey, what's going on? How's it been? How are the kids? How's the family? How's the neighborhood? What's the business like? Whatever that is, they have to ask me a question. Otherwise, they are rude. Law of reciprocity. So they're going to ask me, oh, how's the real estate market? And here's my opportunity to tell them a story. So I want to get them hooked. So I'm going to tell them a story about my cousin who sold her home and made $50,000 more than what it was listed for, and they tell them maybe a different story, some of your stories that you know about what's going on in the market. And I want it to be relating to a seller because they own a home. They're sitting on equity, and I want to tell them about how much money they could get in their pocket without telling them, if you did this, you put 100 grand in your pocket. So I want to tell them a story about somebody I know that owns a home that took advantage of this market and made X amount of dollars more than what it was listed or what was expected or what they thought, and were able to put all this money in their pocket. And, it was great for them because they didn't have to go buy another home. They were changing cities. They wanted to see what it was like on the beach. So they're just going to rent a place on the beach for the next year. Or they're moving from Florida to Colorado or wherever they're moving to, wherever they were going, whatever was happening. Or we have somebody else that we know that's selling their home and they're buying an RV, already have one, and they're just going to travel around the country for the next 6 to 12 months because they both work remotely. Tell them the story. Tell them something that would relate to them. And what's going to happen from there is it's going to get that thought thinking. It's going to get the brain, the thoughts working a little bit. And guess what happened a week and a half, 2 weeks after that? I got 4 phone calls from people and saying, hey, were you really serious that you think that people can pretty much get $30,000 to $50,000 more? Because I looked at what we owe and then I looked and saw what my neighbor sold their home for, and it looks like I might be able to make. And if you're telling me maybe 20 or 30 grand more than what could be expected, that's pretty crazy. I think that we may want to have a conversation. And it's like, were you serious about that? And said, yeah, that's serious. I'd love to come help you out. Let me show you what your home is worth. And we'll just talk about no obligations at all. That. I'm just going to show you what you could put in your pocket potentially, what the best case scenario is. and then what the potential realistic scenario is if things continue to move the way that they are. I'll show you where you could possibly be. So when I do that, I'm going to put in an offer pad request for an offer on their home. And when that happens, so why would we give them our book of business to follow up with? Because you're not giving them your book of business. When you put your number and when you submit them to OfferPad, you submit your name, phone number, and email. So you're not giving them the book of business. That's the whole point. Give 10 spas. The different point of view is you're looking at it from a scarcity mindset of, I don't want to give them my book of business. Well, yesterday in the training, when he walked through the submission, he specifically said, use the offerpad.com/C21BE website. And when you submit the property, you put in your name, phone number, and email. They already have an address. They're already mass mailing people in our area. Your homeowner is already getting something from OfferPad, listening to them on the radio, seeing their ads on YouTube, hearing them or seeing them on TV. It's already happening. So if we put, that's the thing. They have access to all the tax rolls. It's all public record info. They're reaching out to everybody. So when I put in their address as somebody who's interested, they're just going to send them another mailer because they don't have their phone number, email, or anything like that. So we are doing them a service. Plus, if we put them in the system, we would get paid 3% if they decide to go with OfferPad and sell their home. So, and if they sell their home, then the job was done. We did what we were supposed to do. We gave our seller an opportunity. We told them we would make them, $450,000. OfferPad would give them, I don't know, same price, 425. I don't know, whatever that number would be. OfferPad would give them that, and they made a decision. Most of the people that are out there are not going to go with them, but it's an opportunity for you to brush up on your skills, make some contacts, do a pricing analysis, bring them a cash offer, and show them your worth and value. Because when you show them a cash offer, you still show them, this is what we do when we put it on the open market. This is what happens when we list the property and we put it on the market on a Wednesday and we position it out on the market, get the highest and best offers by Sunday, and typically putting offers in that are going to benefit you and put $20,000 to $50,000 more in your pocket than if we would have been forced to sell it on the first day or sell it to someone like OfferPad. But I understand this could be an option for you. So let's look at it from the abundance mindset. We're not giving them any contact information. They already have all the public record information they need, but it's an opportunity for you. You can make $1,500 by doing the things that we should be doing anyway. So if you ever wanted to get paid for the actions, do it. Do 5 of them, they'll give you $500. Do 10, they'll give you $1,000. So let's get out there and see if we can't make some more opportunities and create some more listings for the buyers that are out there that need to buy. That's one point. Vacant land. So I've had quite a few calls on vacant land. So why is vacant land becoming more and more relevant? Well, because there's not enough homes for buyers to buy, and a lot of the buyers that we've seen do have cash. They do have or large down payments, and the only problem with vacant land right now is if you try to build, the cost is going to be pretty high just because of the amount of material and cost and everything that's incurred there. But there are people buying vacant land so they can be in this market. There's people that are in New York, New Jersey, California saying, oh, I want to move, Chicago, wherever. Now I want to move. I want to go to Florida, but the housing price is too crazy. Let me buy a piece of land. I'll build on it in 2 or 3 years and I'll move then. So there's a lot of opportunities for people. So vacant land is becoming more prevalent. Anybody who wants to have a foot in this market is looking for any opportunity, and vacant land is an opportunity. So it's the same reason why homes are relevant. People who bought, then also the people who own land. Anybody who bought land a year ago or 2 years ago is seeing a significant increase in the value due to the shortage of inventory of homes. I've seen some vacant land that they just closed on it last 2019. 2020, they paid anywhere between 100 and 150, and they're listing it for 150 to 200, sometimes even more for it, and some of them are going under contract. So vacant land is going to become a little bit more relevant, and you'll start to see some other opportunities. So I wanted to go through the vacant land contract and just kind of talk about some of the points. and some of the main points here that you want to look for. So if you happen to do a vacant land contract, here's the differences and the things that you want to pay attention to. Number one, you got your sale and purchase contract for whatever address, the sale and purchase contract between the seller and the buyer, and then your address and legal description. So a lot of vacant land doesn't have a fully platted address, so the legal description and the section, township, range of whatever county becomes very, very important. So make sure that you're getting the real property ID number and the legal description, section, township, and range of the county. Make sure you're getting that correct, and make sure that you're getting that directly from the property appraiser's office. Do not always rely on the listing. We've had plenty of opportunities and problems where we've sold a piece of land, and when we got down to close to the closing, the title commitment was for a different piece of land because some of the numbers were off, and we sold the wrong piece of land and we had to correct it. So just paying attention to that. There's also including all improvements existing on the property and following additional property. So if there is, say, a workshop or a shed or something that's on there, you may want to put that in there just for clarity. Obviously the well is something that's built, is dug in, but it might make sense if there's a well and septic to put that on there if you want clarity, but it does say including all improvements existing on the property and the following additional property. But clarity sometimes can make sure that you're put in the right position. Purchase price and escrow, everything is going to be the same. Initial deposit, also the same as a residential contract, very similar, nothing different. And then also you have additional deposits if you would like. They do give you the option to do one after the effective date or after the expiration of your due diligence period, which we'll talk about shortly. Total financing, if you're doing financing, any other costs similar to our contract, and then the balance to close similar to a residential contract. So not too much different other than making sure that we really pay attention to legal description, property ID, section, township, range. The next section is going to be different. So you can check this if the purchase price is going to be determined by a cost per unit rather than a fixed price. So a lot of times, if you have a huge piece of land, the land isn't always exact with the measurements and size. It'll say 100 acres. Well, it might be a little bit more or a little bit less once you get out there and plot it, survey it, get everything done. So sometimes you'll do a cost per lot, per acre, per square foot. You can put a different price in there, so that I'm willing to pay you $30,000 an acre or this much per square foot of land. That's something that you can also do depending on the plots. For our purposes, generally, most of the time, we're going to be dealing with somebody selling a piece of land at a fixed price that will be negotiated out. So we don't see this a whole lot, but if you get into larger plots, commercial plots, people buying, large tracts of land, that is something development, that could be something you'd run into. Time for acceptance, same thing, nothing different there. Closing date, closing date will be on this date, nothing different. Extension for closing, very similar again, CFPB. If the buyer doesn't receive their closing disclosure, there's the CFPB regulations for lending if there is a loan. That is something that we need to pay attention to. Next section is very similar. Buyer will pay cash for the property with no financing contingency. This is very clear. Buyer will pay cash for the property with no financing contingency. The residential contract says that if buyer does get a loan, he recognizes that there is no protection, and any delay to the closing will be, does not give him any protection from the CFPB because you check this box. This just says buyer will pay cash for the property with no financing contingency. It doesn't say you can't get a loan. It just says you have no protection. This next section is very similar. The contract is contingent on buyer getting a loan within a certain amount of days. It says if left blank 30 days after the effective date, very similar. Now, in vacant land, a lot of times we do see seller financing. So we have an option here to check the box. The buyer is going to do new financing, meaning they're applying for a new loan, and they will have a lender put it together, and it's going to be financing for this amount of money or this percentage of the purchase price at a fixed rate or an adjustable rate, not to exceed a certain rate. Very similar to what we typically see in our contracts, but this is one that we would normally see in a residential, is new financing, but there's an option for seller financing. And is it going to be a first or secondary money note mortgage in the amount of X for a rate of this much? The last one is mortgage assumption. So if the current seller has a mortgage, you can assume that mortgage if it's an assumable mortgage, and we can put it together there as well. So those two options, you tend to see a little bit more of this in vacant land than you do in residential sales. But for the most part, you will probably be mostly dealing with buyer will pay cash or buyer will get new financing most of the time. But seller financing, it can be relevant. Assignability, very similar. May assign and be released, may assign, not be released, may not assign. Title, little different. So this top section says that the seller has the legal capacity to and will convey marketable title to the property by, check a box, a statutory warranty deed or a special warranty deed or other, free of liens, easements, encumbrances, and talks about that. So which one would you want to check? In here, sometimes it's going to depend on the seller, but for the most part, to have the buyer afforded all of the protections, a statutory warranty deed is basically a general warranty deed. It's going to cover it'll cover any chain of title back since the property has been there that they can trace. A special warranty deed is only going to cover that. It's more not protection, but it's going to say the seller says, I'm only going to warrant the property for the time that I've owned it. I can only warrant the property for the time that I've owned it because I have no idea what's happened before, and I'm not going to be held accountable for it. So that's my special warranty deed to you. I will cover the time frame that I've owned the property. A statutory warranty deed is what you typically are going to want for the buyer, but in certain seller circumstances, especially bank-owned properties, a lot of times you'll have a special warranty deed. Next, title evidence, who's going to pay? It's just written a little bit differently, not any different than what we typically have. This is going to be done at the seller's expense or the buyer's expense. Which one? It's just, again, just written differently. It's the same thing. It's like, hey, seller will pick and pay, buyer will pick and pay. This just says it'll be at the seller's expense or the buyer's expense. And you will get your title commitment within a certain amount of days of the effective date or a certain amount of days prior to closing. Again, just worded differently than a residential contract. The only difference here is we will be using a title insurance commitment by a Florida licensed title insurer or an abstract of title prepared or brought current by an existing abstract firm and certified as correct by an existing firm. So you have the option to check one or the other. Now, for all of our purposes, we're going to want to have a title insurance commitment by a Florida licensed title insurer. It's not most of the time that we're going to have that capability to do that. If you have an abstract, you can do that, but the title insurance commitment is going to be the better, easier way and more clear way. Then, similar to a residential contract that we have, you have title examination time. After receipt of title evidence, buyer will have, if left blank, 10 days, and the seller will have, if left blank, 30 days to cure any of the items that the buyer finds the title commitment and he sees that there's something on there that's going to be an encumbrance to him. So he's going to say, I want you to cure this. So he'll have 10 days to identify that in the title commitment. The seller will have 30 days from that notification to do so. Very similar to a residential contract. But it also says 10 days, but not to exceed past the closing date. Property condition. This is where it gets a little different. So this says the seller will deliver the property to buyer at closing in his present as is condition, with conditions resulting from buyer's inspections and casualty damage, if any, accepted. Right. So that just means anything that the buyer does during your inspection is going to be it's going to be an exception to the as is condition. The seller's not going to have to fix anything that the buyer did. Seller will not engage in any permit activity that would materially alter the property's condition without prior written consent from the buyer. So during this period, the seller cannot make any changes or do anything to it without consent from the buyer. The biggest difference is going to be the due diligence period. So this says there's a due diligence period, no due diligence period. So check box 1 if you want to have one, check box 2 if you won't. This used to say feasibility study or feasibility period. So feasibility period is just due diligence. You want to look at the due diligence period as your, if it's a buyer, this is the buyer's as is inspection period in a residential contract. It says that at buyer's expense and within blank days, 30 days if left blank, after effective date, and in buyer's sole and absolute discretion, determine whether the property is suitable for the buyer. Buyer's as is inspection period is basically your due diligence period in buyer's sole and absolute discretion. What does that mean? It means he can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, however he wants, canceling the contract, moving forward the contract, performing it due diligence, not performing due diligence, whatever he wants. And if he determines during that period that he does not want to buy this property, he has the ability to do that. Bugs and bunnies study. Yeah, so what kind of studies are buyers going to be doing? So if your buyer's buying like a 1 acre plot of land, or 1 acre plot in a neighborhood or in an area that's already been platted and everything's developed, streets, stormwater drains, sidewalks, lights, all that kind of stuff, or everything's basically in place, electric's already basically there, it just needs to be running connected. There's not too much that your buyer's going to need to do. The basic things your buyer's going to need to do basically is, can I build what I want on this property? Do I have a builder? Do I have a plan? Are the setbacks, wetlands, layout, any of that? Is there anything that's going to encumber on me to be able to build the property that I want? So having a builder, having some plans, having these things already done, having the builder come out and walk the property, having a survey, being able to go through these things. If you're a seller, have a survey to provide, it's going to make it an easier sale. Is it in a flood zone? Do you have, what do you have here? So showing them that and having a buyer determine, can I build what I want on this piece of property? That's basically what your buyer's going to be doing in a plot of land like that. In larger plots of land or in pieces of land that are in the middle of nowhere that basically have nothing done to them, there are a lot more extensive testing that you're going to need to do. Yes, you can get into soil testing and all of that, but a lot of times if the land and surrounding area has been developed, you don't need to worry too much about it. But yes, you can do soil testing, there's environmental testing, there's all kinds of different things that they can get into. My brother-in-law works for a company, environmental, that's what they do. They come out and survey land and they do tests, they survey the land, they look for endangered species, they look for things. He had an instance where somebody bought, there were hundreds of acres of land, somebody came in and paved a street down there, and at some point somebody found gopher tortoises. And so his company had to come back out and go through and use sonar detection to find where the gopher tortoises were, and they found about 50 to 60 of them that were buried underneath the pavement. Big issues. So those are some of the testing that you do on bigger plots of land and all different. If you have something where somebody's buying, they're going to plan to develop it, and they have to test and see, is the soil good? Are there, the bugs and bunnies study? I like that. So they're going to look into those different things. Nancy, I was talking with her last night about a property, and she said after we spoke last night, they agreed to waive the feasibility study instead of shortening it. They initially had a closing date of May 18th, and they left this line blank right here. So he said today is April 28th. They wanted to close May 18th, and they had a 30-day feasibility study due diligence period. What does that mean? That means that they have in their sole and absolute discretion the ability to cancel the contract right up until the closing date. And they don't have to do a thing other than perform what they need to elsewhere in this contract, but they don't have to do a thing, and they could just walk right up to closing and say, by the way, we're canceling. We're not buying this piece of property. So this piece of land it's already developed. It's already got county water, sewer, electric, and everything right there. Just needs to be tied in and hooked in. Everything's ready to go. It's already platted. It's addressed. Everything's good to go. So there's really not much that they need to do. There's homes right next door. They just need to be able to determine that they can build what they want on this property, which a lot of times can be done before you even get under contract. So depending on what you're selling is going to determine your due diligence period. Or you have the ability to say no due diligence period. I'm satisfied. I'm happy. I'm buying the land no matter what. I don't care what it says because I know I can do what I want with it based on what I've seen up to this point. All right. Changes in government regulations and levels of service which affect buyers' intended use of the property will not be grounds for terminating this contract if the due diligence period has expired. So if you're buying this property, this says that if there's a governmental change or a change in a level of service of something that could be used on that property, or something that you could do that you can't do now, This says that during your due diligence period, you have the right to cancel, but if it's passed, then that changes. It is not a right to cancel anymore. You still have the responsibility to move forward with this. Flood zone buyers advised to verify by survey with the lender with appropriate government agencies which flood zone the property is in. This does not say, and like our contract, that there's a 20-day period where if the buyer determines the home is in a special flood zone, that they would have the ability to determine if the flood insurance would work for them if they're able to move forward. Coastal construction control line. This is mostly for beachfront type properties, mostly for that. So there's a coastal construction control line that goes up and down the beach, and some of the tear downs that they have. So they're able to have the home where it's at, but if somebody came in and wanted to tear that down, they wouldn't be able to rebuild right where that property is because the coastal construction control line goes right through where the home is right now. So if you're having somebody buy a tear down on the beach, something you may want to make sure and verify the coastal construction control line, make sure that they will be able to build the home they want once they tear down that one, even if it's pushed back further. Is there enough land for them to do that? So just identifying that. A buyer can waive that right if they want by checking that box. Closing costs, very similar to ours, very similar to a residential with residential contract. Here's the seller cost. They're going to pay the taxes on the deed. They're going to pay recording fees. They're going to pay for the title evidence. If it was checked in paragraph 8, they'll pay for the estoppel fees. What's the buyer going to pay for? The buyer's going to pay for all of these things here. Why? Because this contract says that's what's going to happen. You can easily write something in and change any of that if you would like. Talks about prorations, same thing, very similar to prorations of taxes and things like that on the settlement statement. Special assessments by a public body, very similar to a residential contract. It's just written a little bit differently. There is no box 1 or 2 or A or B. This is saying that the same statement regarding special assessments imposed by a public body, the seller will pay in full the amount of liens that are certified, confirmed, and ratified before closing. So this says the seller will pay in full the amount before the closing. And then anything that's left, if the special assessments may be paid in installments, who will pay them after closing, the seller or the buyer? Seller means seller will pay all of the assessments in full. That's similar to box, which one is that? Box B, showing that the seller will pay the assessments in full. And B, the next box, buyer will pay installments after closing. That's the fair way to do it. The seller will pay any installments prior to closing when they have the enjoyment of the property, and the buyer will pay installments after closing when they have their enjoyment of the property. And if the assessments are to be paid in full, it basically says they'll be paid at closing and collected. Property taxes, similar. Don't rely on previous taxes. Do your own research. FERPTA, 1031 exchange, same, very similar. Calendar days are going to be used in this, exactly like a FAR bar. It goes through the same things, talks about weekends and holidays and extending till 5 p.m. the next business day if any performance date falls on a weekend or a holiday. Risk of loss, eminent domain, similar. Force majeure, same thing. Nothing different there. Complete agreement, same, very similar. This is the complete agreement that we have here. There's nothing outside of that. Default dispute resolution, very similar. Attorney's fees and costs, same thing. Escrow agent, professional advice. The rest of these are basically just disclosures. Commercial real estate sales commission lien act. If the property is a commercial real estate as defined by section of the Florida statutes, the following disclosure applies. The Florida Real Estate Sales Commission Lien Act provides that when a broker has earned a commission by performing licensed services under broker agreement with you, the broker may claim a lien against your net sales proceeds from the broker's commission. So it just allows the broker in a commercial property to put a lien on the property for their commission. Now the next section, this is a little bit different. This asks for all the brokers and licensees involved in the transaction. The seller's agent, the buyer's agent, and license number. The seller's sales associate email, buyers, so on and so forth, all the way through there. One thing that's different. So addenda for a vacant land, there's only a couple, the backup contract and the kickout clause. And then you can put other. So if there's certain terms that you wanted to put in, you can write them into additional terms. if you needed to disclose something or write something, like if you're an agent and you're going to buy vacant land, there is no addendum AA, because addendum AA, licensee's disclosure of personal interest in property, attaches to a FAR contract. You can see this is a vacant land 14 contract. This is not a FAR contract. So those addenda for a FAR contract do not attach to a vacant land contract, which is why there's only these A, B, and C here. There is a vacant land backup contract, a vacant land kickout clause. Other, if you needed to have other addendum, other addenda, you can write your own. You can take a blank addenda and write it out. You can have another exhibit like some of the iBuyers do. We have a separate addendum for exhibit A or addendum A. This is all of the terms that they want. You can do that. Just check other and add that. If you are a licensee, you could write in here in additional terms. Buyer is a buyer's related to, or buyer is a licensed real estate agent, or sales associate is also licensed is acting as a buyer. So you can write any of those things right here just for clarity. Counter offers the same thing, buyer and seller information, and that is basically it. That is all of the vacant land contract. Not too imposing, nothing major. Couple differences to pay attention to. If you need any help with one, just reach out to any of us. We're happy to help and walk through. But I just wanted to spell some of that out because I've had a lot more calls about it, and those are the main points. Are due diligence period. What is it? Before, when it was feasibility study, it was a lot more questions because they're like, what does that mean? But now that it says due diligence, because they just changed that in the last version of this to due diligence period, it makes a little more sense. But just see that as your buyer's as is inspection period, and see that from the seller standpoint as an as is inspection period. So just keep that in mind. And with that being said, we're almost at 9:20. Don't need to jump into anything else. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I hope you guys have a great Wednesday, and we will see you shortly. Thank you.